So my question then to you is, how then important is that attribution of meaning to things? So I'll use, for example, recently the pharmaceutical industrial complex released a product for the masses to take. And the majority of people said, oh, that's safe and effective. I'm looking at this and I'm attributing the meaning that this is a safe product. Other people look at this and say like, oh wow, that's poison. That's toxic to the body. I don't want to put that in my body. And so they're attributing that. It's the same thing. It's the same object, two
Yeah.
different things. And so how important do you think that is? And where do you think inherent truth lies in being able to discern these things? Is there like when you're observing something and you identify some external stimuli as being truth, that then information is being received and it's pinging you on some level to say like, oh, that's factual, that's true, as opposed to something else. But then somebody else may look at that same thing and deem it as not being true. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that I think that the way that it relates to purpose is again to notice that just like you were saying, it's the one thing, but people have different interpretations of it, right?
Mhm.
Um, the the thing to notice in connection to purpose is that either interpretation assumes purpose,
Right.
right? They're both predicated on saying this is a significant decision. It has significant impact on my future. Um, it's meaningful. There's no non-meaningful, non-significant option. So I think that's how the purpose part of it connects. Um, and and so with the multiverse idea, like there's it's very easy to see, as you were saying, that you can be pulled down the road of assuming meaninglessness. But again, just going back to what I said before, the question is really, wait, why do you assume meaninglessness? Because there's actually not really a good case for it. It's just like you assume, I don't know what you assume. You just assume you're assuming that everything's random. And the more things there are, the more definitely it's random. Like, not really a clear connection there. Either meaning is infinite is or it's not, as we discussed previously. And if meaning is infinite, then there's no problem with there being infinite universes because there's still infinite meaning and it fills all of them, and each person is still connected to infinite meaning. So, as you said, you can easily just conclude, well, God is great. Um, so I think the issue with truth is slightly different than the issue with purpose,
Hmm.
because the truth truth might be just as foundational as purpose in terms of um, ontology, like what just exists and is. But we enter into a relationship with truth based on the hardwired assumption of purpose that we have. So purpose kind of precedes truth for us in that sense. We are automatically on a quest amidst a purpose, and the prime goal of at least the intellectual quest is towards truth. So, um, so truth is only just secondary in that sense. And then you get into the ideas of how do we come into how do we recognize truth? How do we discern truth? And that just by saying that, we've assumed that everybody's aware that there is falsehood and that it's hard to discern because we can be tricked and we can be mistaken. And that actually ties back to one of the things that I pointed out in the chapter where we're talking about the issues that people habitually have with purpose. And one of them is the assumption that everything's insignificant, including my consciousness. So why should I believe anything that you're saying? The solution to that I pointed out is, why are you primarily assuming insignificance and meaninglessness? Because that's nonsense. The other part that comes up, and this sort of ties back to the tree example of like people looking at our supposition of purpose as an imposition, as an unjust assault on the world in a way of our broken consciousnesses. Then they ask, well, how do we know our purposes, the purposes that we perceive, are even the right ones? That's a good question. And the answer is we don't. It's pretty simple. And what I point out there is this is a disappointing answer. This is an inconvenient answer. It makes things difficult, but it does not immediately stand for an immense existential problem. It doesn't mean that we are suddenly broken beings in a haphazard world. It means we're fallible. It means we can't just trust our intuitions, and we can't just trust our experts, and we can't necessarily conclude something is exactly what it seems to be, or we saw something, therefore we have the best insight onto what it means. We are fallible. We are immensely fallible, and we need to be skeptical, and we need to ask questions. And sort of even though it's long now, it's still the short answer to your question, because there's a lot of complications to thinking about it. But the short answer is we better approach truth in a community of creative conjecture and collective criticism, as David Deutsch points out. There's no just, I found the truth seer and he says the true things and I follow them. Finally found the needle in the haystack. Now I'm good to go. We're all constantly mistaken. But when we group together and work proactively and all seek the truth, even through disagreement, and we test each other's ideas and challenge each other's ideas, then the emergence of that process is a collective journey towards truth. And it really must be collective, and we really depend on other people, probably more than we're aware. And it's probably almost certainly the case that the collective truth-seeking trajectory will be better than your own personal trajectory, even if you can't adequately discern exactly where that midpoint is. So